tiny friends. Welcome back to TinyKeyHoleMinis. Today I thought I would do a recap on two of my favorite and most simple DIYs. These two projects were done way back in the beginning of my channel, and since I've learned so much about the filming and all that good stuff, I wanted to redo the audio and boost these two projects to the top of the list. So if your miniature scene has unwanted critters like mice or some flies that need to be shooed away, well then these mice traps and fly swatters may be a much needed accessory for your miniature scenes. I hope you enjoy today's recap. Okay, so since this little miniature was so simple and really didn't take much time at all to create, I was able to create several in a short amount of time. Now these ones look pretty brand new, but I'm going to age them up and make them look a little grimy and older. And you can choose to do the same or leave them as is, depending on what's going to fit the needs of your scene. Now I started with some scrap wood. I have plenty of that lying around. You could use craft sticks, scrap wood, coffee stir sticks, and if you don't have any wood at all, you can cut pieces of chipboard or cereal box or food boxes. You can easily stack those together to get your width, and if you're using really thin coffee stir sticks, you might want to stack two pieces together to create one piece. You're just going to need a rectangle shape for the base. So I'm just going to mark off where I'm going to cut, and I'm measuring approximately about a half of an inch to 3/4. It's just slightly over a half of an inch. When it comes to my measurements, most of the time you're going to hear me say approximately or about or roughly, and that is because I'm usually eyeballing the miniatures that I'm making. So slightly over a half of an inch, but still under 3/4 of an inch should be good to go. This piece of wood that I'm using is pretty dry and brittle, but easy enough to work with and cut. I'm going to sand both ends with my nail file, and then I'm going to take a fine tip Sharpie, and I'm just going to draw a line right around the edges. Kind of give it like a little rectangle frame. You can choose whatever color you would like. I've seen red, and if you would like to make your mouse traps replicate the Victor mice traps, you could do that as well. Those traps have been around since the turn of the century, but I've also seen these older style mice traps, probably more generic type that have the black on them. I'm just going to try and duplicate the image that I'm referencing for this project. You can easily pull up some images on an internet search to create whatever design you would like your traps to look like. These traps that are going into the Josephine house will be pretty simple, generic traps, but very well used. Next, I'm using a regular tip Sharpie, and I'm still sticking with the black, but again, you can choose whatever color you like. I'm just going to roughly color the edges, and I'm not covering the edges completely because I do want some of that natural wood to show through to make it look like there's some wearing of the paint. You could choose to stain your wood. This piece was already stained, or you can leave it as is, a light color. It's totally up to you and how you want your traps to look. Next, I'm going to take a piece of disposable aluminum pie pan that I purchased from the dollar store. These are really inexpensive, and I just cut a rectangular strip long enough to hold onto it. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and just curl the end upward and over onto itself. I'll trim the excess off afterwards, but this just gives you enough of the strip to hold on to. And these things are so tiny. I'm not really sure what purpose this part of the trap serves, but it is necessary. It's on the trap. I'm cutting this piece down to a square, so I'm just going to cut off the excess so that it makes this piece into a square piece. You can see how tiny it is when I lay it next to the trap. Moving forward, I'm going to take this miniature clothing pin, and you can get these in bagfuls. It's pretty easy to take apart. You just give it a little twist. I'm going to use the spring. We're going to need that for the mouse trap. I'm just going to lay the spring down on the trap. And right now, the end is not quite wide enough. It's very easy to pull the two pieces apart and kind of manipulate it and shape it to where they line up together. Right now, there is an opening, but it's very easy for you to connect the two pieces together to make them look like one whole bar. It won't be so noticeable after we're completed with the traps, but now the spring will fit on the trap more accurately. Okay, we just need to make one more part of this trap and then we can put it all together. I'm going to use this jewelry wire. I'm not really sure what gauge it is because it's been out of the package, but any type of wire that is pretty easy to manipulate will work for this. I'm just cutting off a little strip and I'm curling the end up kind of like a little loop. I'm going to squeeze it closed. You can see what it looks like. So it's just kind of like a little hook loop. I'm going to hook it onto the bar where the two pieces connect, so kind of where the opening is. Squeeze it a little tighter. You want it to still be able to move back and forth, so you don't want it so tight that it no longer moves. As you can see, I brought the piece of wire towards the back, laying it over the spring. I'm going to try and hold these two parts together and just take the very end and kind of bend it upward into a L shape or a 90-degree angle. And if your piece falls off, that's perfectly okay. Let it fall off. Don't stress yourself out by trying to keep it on there. At this point, it doesn't need to be permanently on there yet. It was just for measurement purposes to get the length that I needed. I gave it a clip and cut off the excess. And now I'm just going to take the other end and kind of curve it into a hook shape. Just give this end a little hook shape. Okay, once you have your hook made, you can go ahead and attach it onto the bar and make sure you bring it back and lay it over the spring so that the hook end is kind of sitting right on top of the spring. You can switch it up and be versatile. The hook doesn't always have to lay on the spring. Some of my traps, the hook is laying forward, outward, and you'll see the difference a little bit later. Right now I'm using Aleene's jewelry and metal glue. Any type of super bonding glue is going to work for this. And I'm just going to put a little dab on this end for my tiny little square pie pan piece. So that's going to lay right here. And I'm just giving it a light push right down into the glue. Before I glue this piece down, I'm just going to give it a dry fit to see where I need to put the glue. I'm going to put a little bit right under the spring, so kind of in the middle. And then I'm going to add a little bit towards the edge where that bar will lay down. Now this is where you want to decide whether you want your hook to lay back on the spring or if you want it to lay forward. Before gluing it down, you want to position it because it may end up getting permanently glued and it may get stuck permanently. You may not be able to move that hook back and forth. So make your decision on which way you want your hook to be facing and go ahead and glue down your piece. Now, I'm not saying that it's gonna permanently get glued down. I guess it just depends on where you put your glue. You may still be able to move your hook back and forth after you've glued this spring into place. But I just wanted you to be aware of that. It could be a possibility, and I don't want you to get upset if that happens. You can see that I have left a couple of mine where the bars are facing outward and the trap is not yet set. And then I created some to look like the trap is already set. The bar is laying over the spring. Okay, now that the traps are completed and all together, you could stop here if you'd like. But for the Josephine house, everything is old in that house. So I need to age them up. I'm using a solution of alcohol and black acrylic paint. This is a technique that I learned from Gretchen at Little Gretchen's workshop way back when I first did this video. And I just thought this was the perfect opportunity to try out this method as an aging wash. And I really like using this method a lot on metals or metal parts because the alcohol really sticks right to it and it dries super quickly versus a watered down acrylic wash. But I still use both methods depending on what I'm putting it on. And you can see I'm just dabbing it on with the brush. I'm just dabbing it right on. It's pretty much staying in place. It runs where it needs to, but it's not really drippy and thin like a watered down acrylic. So now that I have these old and grimy and they look a little gnarly, these traps have already been placed around the house because this is a recap and I did do this long ago. Miss Margot definitely doesn't want them in the house. She doesn't mind that they're in the barn, but she doesn't want them in the house. Maybe she should get a cat. Okay, I did make some Swiss cheese out of polymer clay. And in the original video, I do show the process of that. But for the purpose of this video, I skipped it all together. Now, the one or two times that I have ever set a trap, I used peanut butter. And I felt like peanut butter was extremely successful. Probably a cheaper way to catch mice, but nonetheless, they just love it. And I really don't think that in Miss Margot's days, they thought about using peanut butter. So I'm going to go ahead with the traditional stinky Swiss cheese. I did coat the cheese with a layer of matte Mod Podge because I did want a very slight shine. I don't want it to look wet, but I do want some sort of very light shine to it. I'm using my Aleene's jewelry and metal glue to glue these pieces in place. And since I'm not really familiar with where the bait needs to be placed on the trap, I'm going to switch that up a bit and put it here on one trap and put it there on another trap. And maybe one of them would be accurate. Okay, so here's a closer look of what they look like completed. Some are sitting on the hook. One is not on the hook. I just place it on the little metal square piece. Okay, tiny friends, that completes this easy peasy DIY miniature mouse trap. So if you're in need of one of these, you can now make them for your own miniature scenes. Okay, the miniature fly swatter. Miss Margot definitely needed a few around the farmhouse. These are easier to make than the mouse trap. Another quick and simple DIY where you can make multiples in a short amount of time. So for this, I'm going to use some of this green floral wire that I purchased at my local dollar store. You can find this stuff at your local hobby and craft stores. It's super easy to manipulate and bend, so it's perfect for this project. I'm also going to use some of this burlap ribbon. I also found this at my local dollar store. This has a wire on the edges, so it's a wired ribbon. And it originally had white lace running down the middle of it. But I just cut the stitching off and peeled that lace off of the pieces that I needed. You're actually getting like two materials in one roll because we all know that we can definitely use that lace for several different projects. And this burlap is also really great for several different projects. You can use it for baskets, you can use it for hats, you can use it for screens. Today I'm going to use it for the screen on the fly swatter. Okay, I've colored this piece black previously, and you can see how it looks like a screen. So you can use this for screen doors, windows. I've even ripped it up, made it look like an old no good screen to the screen door in the attic. I'm going to use my silver chrome paint pen, so you can use silver as well. I'm going to need a couple tools today. I'm using my Aleene's jewelry and metal glue for this, but any super bonding glue would work. I'm going to use my flush cutters, my needle nose pliers, and the first thing I want to start with is painting the burlap. This way it'll have time to dry while I'm creating the frame of the swatter. So just pick a section and start coloring. You want to make sure you got yourself a nice square where you're going to be able to fit the frame on. And then I flipped it over and colored the back side. So I'm painting both sides of this. I mean, you can use paint. This is paint, but I find a marker a little bit easier, not as thick as paint. So if you have any paint markers or permanent markers, I would suggest using that. Then I'm going to take a long piece of the wire, and this is probably going to measure about maybe 5 to 6 inches. In the end, the fly swatter is only about 2 inches, but I want to make sure that I have plenty of the wire so that I can work with it. It'll make it a lot easier to manipulate it. I'm folding it over in half, and I know that I'm totally out of the screen, but I'm going to show you. I folded it over in half, leaving a loop at the end. I gave it a little bit of a squeeze, and you can see where I crossed the two pieces of wire over one another. I squeezed it, but I did leave enough of a loop so that I can hang it later on. So if you want to be able to hang your fly swatters, you just want to make sure that you leave enough of a loop at the end. Okay, I'm grabbing the loop nice and tight with my pliers, and I am taking both pieces and twisting them. If you want a nice even twist, kind of like pinch both of the pieces right where those pieces are going to twist together and start turning. I think I twisted about 11 times. I'm using the previous one that I made as a guide. It has a bigger loop at the end, and you can see the difference. I don't have to hang all of mine, but I would like to have at least one hanging in the kitchen. That's where the flies are definitely going to be the most nuisance. Now keep that in mind when you're going to create your loop. Also, you can easily straighten out your twisted handle after you have finished twisting it, so don't worry about it not being completely straight. You can fix that later on. I took the two open ends and kind of just flattened them out, kind of like a T shape, but I'm going to angle each one upward slightly. Give yourself about an inch of wire on each side so you have enough to go all the way around, because you can easily just clip off the excess afterwards. So I'm just making some adjustments, making sure it's nice and straight. My pieces are kind of at an angle, almost almost as if they want to form a Y shape. I do want to say, I have my windows open today. It's such a beautiful day and it's very breezy. So any banging or clanking that you hear in the background is just the wind blowing my blinds and them falling against the window frame. Okay, I'm going to take my pliers and go up about 1/4 inch on one side. And I'm making sure that it still has that slight angle. And then I'm just going to bend it upward into a 90-degree angle. I'm going to do this on both sides. For this side, I'm just kind of eyeballing it and trying to gauge where I need to bend it. I want to try and keep those angle sections at the same length. So just make sure that you're aware of that as well. You can always fix it or re-bend it. It's very simple. So right now it kind of looks like a football goalie. For the side sections, I'm going past 1/4 inch. And again, I'm just using my previous one as a guide. And I'm just going to take the top part and bend it towards the middle. And again, I'm just trying to gauge where I need to bend the other side, trying to keep the two sides even. Now, you can see me having to redo this, so it's probably going to happen. You're probably going to have to redo it a couple times till you get it nice and even, or you get the shape that you like. That's why I suggest using this green floral wire or something pretty similar to it where you can easily manipulate it and, reshape it if you have to. So far, this is what it's looking like. I'm going to make some adjustments and kind of even it up a little bit. I will be clipping some excess off because one side is a little bit longer than the other. And what you want to do is just kind of have them meet in the middle so that they're touching and they look like one complete bar and not two pieces, or it doesn't look like it has an opening in it. So just play around with it to manipulate it, get it the shape that you like, line them up. If you need to clip off any excess, go ahead and do that. It doesn't take much to shape these up. You can see where the one side is overlapping the top of the other. I'm just kind of pushing it down into place. If it's too long and needs to be clipped off, go ahead and do that. But I was able to just push it into place. And I'm pretty happy with this one. So I'm going to go forward with that. I'm just going to take another look compared to my previous one just to make sure they're pretty much the same. So that was the hardest part of this project. Pretty simple, right? I hope so. Next, I'm going to be gluing the frame onto the burlap. I want to make sure that I'm going to glue it down to the very edge, and I'll show you that in a bit. I'm going to use my Aleene's Jewelry and Metal Glue, and I'm going to apply it with a toothpick. So I'm just going to run it right along the frame, all the way around the square part of the handle. Make sure you have your whole square completely covered, or you may have a gap between the fabric and the frame. So I'm just spreading it around and making sure that it's completely covered. And then I'm going to line it up all the way to the bottom so I have less to trim away. I'm going to use the back of my tweezers just to press it down into the glue. I'll just give it a few moments to dry before I trim it. When you flip it over, if you need to paint any part of the back, go ahead and do that. But definitely give it a nice firm press so that it's nicely sealed all along the frame. Okay, I've given this long enough to dry, and I'm going to take a nice sharp pair of scissors. I'm using my tiny little precision scissors. I'm cutting as close to the frame as possible, and I am also kind of angling my scissors a little outward while I'm doing that so that I can kind of bevel the cut a little bit so nothing's sticking out from underneath. Once I've got it cut from the larger piece, I can go ahead and start cleaning up the edges. So anything that I see around my angled sections, I can go ahead and just trim that away. Okay, so that completes the structure of the fly swatter. And if you would like to stop here, you certainly can, or you can add any details you would like to it. You can see this one has a black screen, and I'm just showing the difference between the two screens. If you went along with a silver screen and would like to dirty it up some, you can do that with a little bit of watered down black acrylic paint. This part is completely optional, but I did have a matching green paint that was the same color as the handle or the frame of the fly swatter. So I'm going to use it. It's called Campground Green by Craftsmart. I just want to touch up the back of the screen, even though that's probably not going to be shown. Since I found the paint in my stash, I thought I would use it. And I'm just applying it with a toothpick because it's such a fine frame section. So I'm just running it along the edges. It's actually being painted on top of the screen, but it gives the illusion that it is the frame in case it's flipped over on the wrong side. Okay, tiny friends, that is all I have for you today. If you have seen these videos in the past and are watching again, I hope you enjoyed the recap. These were two of my favorite quick and easy DIYs. If you've never seen them before and you're watching, I hope you enjoyed what you've seen. And if you're new today and would like to see more of my miniature creations, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that top bell notification button to be notified every time I upload a new project so you don't miss out. Please don't forget to hit that like button and let me know what you thought in the comments below. As always, I like to thank you all for watching. Welcome to all my new subscribers. Thank you all for your support. And until next time, tiny friends, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will see you all on the mini side. Bye-bye.